Good evening, friends. You are most welcome to Think Eyes channel. Today we are going to discuss Practicing Anthropology by MAAN, IGNOU, and our topic is Forensic Anthropology, in which we are going to discuss biometrics. Let us begin the topic. The human brain recognizes objects, including human beings, due to cognitive capabilities. Once brain makes an observation, it may remain for years in its memory depending upon a large number of factors like frequency of the same observation, significance of the observation, etc. The object is memorized on the basis of a large number of features which are stored in the brain at the time of observations. When the same object is encountered again, the brain recognizes it on the basis of stored information and comparing it with the observed information. It can be repeated any number of times, though each time some variations in the process may be there and some error may occur. Like for example, while in a crowd we mistakenly address someone else as someone known to us, or sometimes twins are mistakenly identified. To correct such errors, the practice of Brittlenage was created where measurements of various body parts were recorded of the individual convicts so that they could be identified easily when they come again as convicts. It was found by the French anthropologist or criminalist Bertillon. He pointed out that combination of these body measurements were unique, and therefore this practice continued till an erroneous identification of prisoner was established. By that time, use of fingerprints in personal identification was introduced and Brittlenage was combined with it. These examples may be said as a precursor of the modern biometry, though it was manual. All the collected fingerprints were classified as per the formula. Unknown fingerprints were retrieved from the record if they are available already in the record. With the advancement in technology, attempts were made to make the recognition process easier, faster, and error proof, and thus came into existence biometry. Biometrics can be defined as the science of verifying and establishing the identity of an individual through physiological features or behavioral traits. The term may be explained by its essential two dimensions, that are the characteristics and the process. Characteristic invariably must be biological, physiological, and anatomical and or behavioral, while the process may involve a system leading to identification based on the above mentioned characteristics. It can be said that the characteristics are supposed to make a unique pattern that is memorized by the machine, and at the time of retrieval it compares the pattern in question with the stored pattern data and recognizes one unique pattern matching the questioned one. In modern technological terms, it is known as pattern recognition, a branch of artificial intelligence. The first systematic biometrics based on iris pattern was proposed by ophthalmologist Frank Birch in 1936, followed by face and speech based biometric in 1960. The fingerprint based biometric tools were deployed and developed by FBI Federal Bureau of Investigation in 60s, and then many more parameters were introduced as signature, palm, and gait pattern. After standardization of all the processes of biometrics, first personal identification system became operational in 2004 and is known as the United States Visitor and Immigrant Status Indication Technology US Visit VISIT. Presently, we can classify all the biometric tools used in personal identification in three groups as physical biometrics, behavioral biometrics, and chemical or biological biometrics. Physical biometrics is based on the physical features of the human body as face, iris pattern, hand geometry, and fingerprints. Example of behavioral biometrics is handwriting, signature, and speech. while under chemical or biological biometrics, perspiration, skin composition can be included, though this group of biometric is still at the developmental stage. Any biometric tool to be used as an efficient identification means it has to have the following 5 properties. First, it should be universal, that is, trait must be present in everyone. Second, it should be unique, that is, trait should be vary to that extent that it different in every member of relevant population. Third, the trait should be permanent. Fourth, the trait must be measurable. Fifth, the trait cannot be imitated easily. Apart from this, technology being involved in using any trait should be accurate, fast and robust. Also, the interface between the person and the machine should be acceptable with respect to the ease and comfort. Privacy of the information may also be included here for consideration of any technique. Biometrics can be used for two purposes, one for verification and other for identification. In case of verification, the question biometric is compared against the available template of the biometric in stored data. This is generally used for access control devices where only authorized person is allowed to have access to that device or application. In case of identification, one or more comparisons are performed, and if the question data matches with the existing templates, then the identity is established. These days, biometrics which are in use are based on the following: fingerprints, iris patterns, face prints, DNA identification, voice prints, handwriting analysis. Some of the salient features of each of these biometric tools are explained below. First, fingerprints biometrics. Inked fingerprints are obtained on paper and scanned, or fingerprints are directly scanned with the help of special scanners available commercially in the market. The scanned fingerprints is then looked for ridge details, minutiae like ridge endings, ridge bifurcations with respect to their position and direction, number of ridges between particular 2 points. In this way, for each fingerprint, a unique template is developed and stored in database, which is used for comparison when a new fingerprint is received. The fingerprint biometric has many applications as criminal identification, where automated fingerprint identification system AFIS is used to retrieve fingerprints of criminals. Similarly, the unique identification UID or Aadhaar has been started by the government of India to have a unique identification based on biometric tools including fingerprints. Iris patterns biometric. It is based on the concept that iris pattern is unique and permanent throughout the life of the person since formed first in around 8 months of intrauterine life. 8 months of intrauterine life. To capture the iris image, a high resolution camera is used and the images are converted into a template called iris codes. To capture the high quality images, illumination is made with the help of near infrared radiation. Retinal pattern biometrics. Retina present in the back of the eye is illuminated and blood capillaries patterns in the area of photographed with the help of high resolution camera. The digitized images are converted into templates and stored for further comparison when required. Facial recognition biometrics. The human face is the most commonly used parameters to identify a person by others, from his family, friends, etc. One recognizes near ones immediately in a fraction of a second by just looking. This very property of the face, that it has a combination of features like eye, eyebrows, nose, lips, chins, etc., may provide a unique template for each person. In biometrics, as the image of the face may be available in dynamic for the videos, therefore, in addition to static image of the face, system for comparing dynamic images was required to be developed. The face recognition biometrics helps in preventive forensics where surveillance of the person having access to public places like airports, railway stations and malls, etc. can be maintained. DNA biometrics. DNA of every individual is unique with an exception to monozygotic twins and therefore can prove as the most reliable and robust biometric tools for all biometric purposes. Earlier, the technology to analyze DNA was not very common and cost effective, therefore, it was not possible to think of a viable model. But now the technology has become very simple and cost effective, and the situation has changed. Another reason for choosing this tool may be easy availability of DNA from an individual. Almost everything belonging to a person, like saliva on envelope, blood, hair, fingernails, used toothpicks, earbuds, sweat, etc. may be a very good source of it, as every one of these has cells containing DNA. The only drawback of this method is that it is too expensive, and secondly, no database is available for comparison. Handwriting and voice biometrics. Handwriting of a mature person is said to be unique and for centuries being used to establish the authorship of a document or signature on the basis of the unique way of formation of writing strokes. But in case of modern biometrics, it is not the case, and writing geometry is considered in static format of biometrics, while in dynamic handwriting biometrics along with geometry, dynamic features like acceleration, velocity, pressure, etc. are used to recognize an individual. For this, special writing platforms and pens are designed to record the features and convert into templates. Similarly, voice has in individuality. Similarly, voice has individuality, which is due to the shape and size of vocal cord, mouth, nasal cavity, and lips. Any variation in these may also result in variation in the voice. To collect the specimen of the voice, text dependent or text independent modules are available which help in collection of uniform sample for comparison. It is frequently used in telephone conversation regarding password setting, telebanking, etc. Both these tools are behavioral biometrics based, and therefore chances of higher false rejection and false acceptance rate is observed. Both these systems have a restricted applicability due to lack of database. In fact, voice recognition is case dependent and can't be used as biometric tools. By acquiring the knowledge of such new technologies, one can start one's own agency to acquire the data of employees for various industries, government agencies, impart training, and also become an employee at Aadhaar, Unique Identification Authority of India. Dermatoglyphics. A fingerprint is an impression of these friction ridges present on the fingers, palm, toes, and soles. Role of the fingerprints in personal identification. Personal identification through fingerprints has long been recognized and is regarded as the greatest contribution to law enforcement, though not everyone has been fingerprinted, but huge data has been collected on fingerprints that could be used safely for the absolute identity of an individual. From these studies, the following fact-based principles have been evolved. A fingerprint is an individual characteristic. No two fingers have identical ridges characteristics. So far, no two fingers have been observed to possess identical ridges characteristics. A fingerprint will remain unchanged during an individual's lifetime as they appear in intrauterine life and remain till the time skin is damaged permanently or disintegrated after death. Certain diseases also may cause damages to the friction skin. Fingerprints have general ridges, patterns, which make it possible to systematically classify. This advantage allows us to classify fingerprints of large number of individuals systematically, just like books are classified and arranged in library to retrieve them easily to save time. Use of fingerprints in personal identification is very common in the following fields: identification of criminals, identification of criminals whose fingerprints are found at the scene of crime or the crime scene, identification of fugitive through fingerprints comparison, identification of person and maintenance of identity records, service or criminals, identification of unknown deceased person, identification of mass disaster victims, prevention of hospital mistakes in exchange of newly born babies, establishing correct identity in case of kidnapping, unconscious persons, missing persons, mistaken identity, detection of forgeries, bank forgeries, and cases related with money and property, where instead of signature, thumb impression are marked, authentication through biometric in case of entry in office, hotel rooms, access to computers or such gadgets, authentication through biometrics in case of entry in office, hotel rooms, access to computers or such gadgets, in passport and immigration cases. With the introduction of automated fingerprint identification system AFIS technology, use of computer is possible for quick retrieval of recorded fingerprints data. In most of the cases, chance fingerprints may be available at the scene of occurrence, which may be invisible to naked eyes and called latent fingerprints. Therefore, it is required to make them visible for further analysis to establish identity. For this, various physical and chemical methods are available. Various types of fingerprint pattern. The dermal ridges tend to make some specific patterns on distal phalanges of the fingers represent following type of the patterns and are immediate concern. The main types of the pattern are following: arc, loops, holes, arc, loops and holes. Apply a thin film of the printing ink on the distal phalanges of the fingers and roll it on a paper to get a rolled impression of the finger. Activity 4. Get a ink stamp pad and touch ridges side of your thumb lightly to the ink pad so that the ridged skin may be inked. Move this inked thumb on the white sheet. Take a hand lens magnifier to see the magnified image of the print and identify the pattern type. You may repeat the same process with other fingers of both the hands. Scene of crime fingerprints. Fingerprints found at the crime scene may be of three types. First, visible fingerprints. Second, plastic fingerprints. Third, latent fingerprints. Visible fingerprints, as the term suggests, are visible by naked eyes without any aid. The fingerprint is visible as long as there is sufficient contrast between the print and its support. They do not require any treatment for their enhancement and can be photographed directly or record and further analysis purpose. Plastic fingerprint are those fingerprints which are formulated on soft, greasy or plastic surfaces. These are visible and thus can be photographed and sent for comparison purposes. Latent fingerprint is most common form of fingerprint, evident but they have to be made visible. The application of an optical, physical, and or chemical treatment is required to visualize it. The latent fingerprints are deposited by the friction-rich surface and composed of complex mixture of natural secretions and contaminants from the environment. Development of fingerprints depend upon the type of surface on which they exist, temperature of the surface, and surface texture. All surface bearing latent fingerprints can be divided into three main groups. First, porous, example paper. Second, semi-porous, example polymer banknote. Third, non-porous, polythene. Different types of surfaces may need different set of treatment. Therefore, it should be kept in mind that same type of surface should be tried to evaluate a proposed detection sequence before proceeding for the same treatment on the evidence material. Development of latent fingerprints. Large number of methods are available to develop the latent fingerprints. By acquiring the knowledge of fingerprints, one can become a fingerprint expert, giving opinion about the identification of the disputed fingerprints in cases of land and property disputes. One can also work as freelancing fingerprint recorder for the immigration agencies of various countries who require fingerprints of the applicant. Activity 5. Take a white paper or a white laminated sheet. Impress your palm on the surface. Put some color powder as holy color gulal, turmeric powder, or any such color powder on one corner of the surface and roll the paper slightly up and down. Observe if the ridges are visible. If so, then latent fingerprints are developed. Examination of body fluids and tissues. Tissue material, blood, and other body fluids may be encountered in most of the crime related as well as other cases as mass disaster accidents. Blood and damaged, disintegrated body parts are generally found in such cases. In addition to this, semen, saliva, urine, vomit, etc., may also be visible in many cases of offense. These may be found in stained form, therefore, a little different methodology is to be adopted in such cases. First is to examine the stain physically by naked eyes or with special radiation depending upon the situation. After successfully locating the stain, they must be encircled so that in laboratory they can be examined without wasting time or relocate. To ascertain whether the stain is blood or some other red colored material, we have to go for presumptive tests like Benjedrin test, phenolphthalein test. Once it can be confirmed or once it is confirmed that it is blood, then the question arises whether the blood is human or not. For this, precipitin test is conducted where suspect blood extract is taken in a special tube called precipitin tube, and to this different anti-sera like anti-human sera, anti-cow sera, anti-dog sera, anti-fowl sera may be added. It is important to ascertain this fact as many times fake cases are made where animal blood is used. After this, to find out to whom this blood belongs, and this is called individualization. If the blood found at the scene is found to be of B group and none of the suspects belong to this group, then it could be safely said that the blood from the scene belongs to none of them. From the fresh blood, it is not an issue to determine the blood group in no time, as antisera are available which reacts with their corresponding antigen present in the blood. But in case of stains where it may be not only old but also may have been disintegrated, in this case blood groups are determined indirectly by techniques like absorption inhibition technique, absorption illusion technique, and mixed agglutination technique. The same technique are applied to determine the blood groups from other body fluids and tissue materials. The stain other than blood as of saliva, semen, urine are generally found on the garments and therefore may not be visible clearly by naked eyes. Therefore, the garments suspected of having these stains are examined in ultraviolet radiation to locate them. After location, the same may be extracted for their identification. Semen stains may be identified by acid phosphate test, a test of a test for semen specific protein P30, and finally the microscopic examination of stain for the presence of spermatozoa. The presence of saliva may be confirmed by performing test of amylase enzyme. Urea stain may be detected by the odor of the stain as well as under ultraviolet radiation to have fluorescence. To confirm the presence of urine, urea nitrate crystal test and creatinine test creatinine test can be conducted. Summary. In the lesson on forensic anthropology, many diverse topics related with personal identification have been addressed. While identification of skeletal remains is a major issue concerning origin of bone, its age, sex, and to whom it may be belong, biometric address the issue of individualization in two ways, that is verification and identification. After going through this lesson and getting trained in these streams of knowledge, one can help crime scene investigating agencies to reconstruct the events in which that particular crime occurred. Forensic science laboratories recruit scientists at various levels for their routine work to examine bones, body fluids, fingerprints, etc. Thank you very much.